The two major chess playing sites in the world are number one, chess.com for profit, commercial organization, and number two, leechess.org, which is free and open source. Both very popular, both used by elite players. A frequent piece of advice that we encounter, we see it in forums, we see it in YouTube videos, is somebody will say something like you need to play a solid or system based opening when you start out in chess. And so there are many different types of system based openings. College system, for example, but a popular choice will be the London system or accelerated London system. And so what somebody will say is play d4, play bishop f4, play knight f3, e3, c3, knight bd2. The arrow's on the screen right now. And this is going to work against pretty much anything black does, providing, of course, they don't play the Anglin gambit, 1e5, in their first move. And the advert for this type of advice is, well, you don't need any prep. Now, I'll come on to my own story in a second, the openings that I play. However, having progressed from beginner level to intermediate, I would say that this type of advice is already quite disingenuous. We live in an era of AIs, stockfish symbol on the screen right now. Stockfish would crush the strongest grandmasters in the world 100 times out of 100. There is nothing stopping 13, 1400s and even lower rated players from preparing engine lines against you. That is the reality that we have to confront. And so this idea that you don't need to prepare is, I think, a little bit disingenuous. There's always some preparation to do. And where does all this kind of system-based dialogue come from? Well, it comes from, I think, the chess community. So here is an example of a video that is very popular online. How to Win with the London System by Gotham Chess, the number one chess content creator on the planet. And even by his standards, in the red circle here, a video that gets 4 million views is a lot. A lot of people are watching this. Now, you might ask, well, what impact does this have on the chess community? I would say a big one. If you go into leechess.org, free and open source, they publish all their data. You will see that as a percentage of d4, d5 games, the number of people playing bishop f4 has been rising. So back in 2016, it was 6, 7, 8%, but it has risen through the chess boom to the present day, 2024, to almost 20%. So to be clear, almost 1 in 5 games which have d4, d5 on the board now go with the accelerated London bishop f4. And so a natural question then is this really necessary? Now, to answer this question, we can look through the data. So leechess.org kindly publishes all its data about its online games. And so if you go into the filters on the site, I've excluded here in the purple circle Bullet Games. I'm not interested in the distortions created by Bullet Chess. I think that's a different type of chess. And in the red circle here, I've confined it to recent trends. So what is happening in 2024? Everything else is there, all ratings, all other types of chess. And what it says is that there were 70 million d4, d5 games. What's interesting about all these d4, d5 games is that people who play c4 have a slightly better win rate than people who play bishop f4. The people who play the Queen's Gambit, which is often considered too theoretical for beginners and intermediates, are faring better than people who play the accelerated London, albeit by a very small margin. And one of the reasons for this is the Queen's Gambit accepted. There'll be many reasons, but one of the reasons is the QGA. This is a line played by top grandmasters, so black can do this. However, people who do this are struggling. So black's win percentage drops to 41%. White is winning some 54% of games, which is quite a lot. Now, so this video is not an advert for the Queen's Gambit. This is not an opening that I'll play. But we can now ask the question, well, why not just play the Queen's Gambit? Where is the statistical evidence that really you're better off playing these kind of system solid based openings that we talked about at the top? Now, you may say something like, well, isn't this just stronger players who are doing better with the Queen's Gambit? And so if we go into the filters and we restrict the data even more, so let's say only rapid games here, the first red circle, the second red circle, 1400s on leechess.org. This is about 1100s on chess.com. So these are, beginners, good beginners. And then the third red circle here, 2024, you will see that there are 3.5 million d4, d5 games. And what's interesting is that the stats get even worse. And so here now you can see c4, the Queen's Gambit, has a win rate of 54% compared to bishop f4, which is 52%. And so this idea that it's too theoretical, you should avoid this, well, actually, when you look at the data, it doesn't really back that claim up. And so this idea that you need to play a solid or system-based opening, like the college system or London system, I think is already looking a little bit suspect. Now, full disclosure, I am nobody in chess. I'm not an elite player, never will be. Equally, I'm not a beginner. I made it to the late 1800s, chess.com rapid. On lichess.org, slightly different rating system, hover between 2000 and 2100. So let's say I am an intermediate. So this video should ultimately be quite interesting to you because I'm more like you. If a grandmaster plays any old opening, well, you'd expect them to do a speed run, make their way through it quite easily because they have enormous chess acumen. Me, on the other hand, I do a lot of the things that many of you are doing. You know, I hang my queen, make horrible blunders. And what's interesting is that I play 1b3, which already gives, I think, people pause for thought. And I've been doing just fine by playing this. I own the Chessable course, Lifetime Repertoire by Grandmaster Adaban Bhaskaran. You don't need to buy a Chessable course, but I have one anyway, where I tried to incorporate some of the main ideas that he has into my play. And so what's kind of amusing is that I get a lot of comments in the chat, obviously people hiding behind avatars and screen names, their computer screens, but people will say things like, good luck with that while I'm playing them. And I'll say, I don't need any, right? So at the risk of sounding a little bit cocky, I've been doing just fine. So I was a beginner a few years ago, progressed from 800 to 1882, peak rating here, 1897. But the most important stat here is that I've played less than 700 rapid games on chess.com, which is quite a low number. Okay, a further 600 on lichess.org, but safe to say I haven't played 5, 10, 15,000 rapid games online. You can't really say that I've learned this thing through brute force. Really, I've been focusing on the kind of key ideas and focusing on doing my tactics puzzles. And what's interesting is that if you go into my Lichess stats, you'll find that I have a very healthy win percentage with 1b3. So you can see here that I've won some 58% of games. When I was playing e4, 46%, not a very healthy win percentage. The rest of the stuff here, c4, d4, the sample sizes are not that big. And so obviously I'm a big proponent of playing offbeat kind of sidelines. I'm not saying that you should, but if you are interested, you can go check out this video online. Now, to reiterate, I'm not saying that you should play 1b3. There are, in fact, many good reasons not to play this opening. But what I'm trying to say is that don't worry too much about this solid and system-based stuff, but rather pick an opening where you can focus on the ideas and the ideas are clear to you. And so, for example, b3 is much easier than people think. So when I play b3, many of my opponents are going to play e5. And after bishop e2, the e5 pawn is hanging. They're going to defend it with knight c6, maybe d6, but knight c6 develops a piece. And I'm going to put c4 on the board, which is the line recommended by Grandmaster Adaban Bhaskaran in his course. And so this immediately deters black from putting 2 pawns in the center. Okay, they could play d5, but after c takes d5, queen takes d5, knight c3, the queen's got to move. So many players won't play d5 in this position. So people say don't play this hyper-modern stuff, but we are contesting for the center. And the ideas here is that we're going to play a3, queen c2, maybe knight bd2, knight f3, e3. And we have to be careful about our opponent playing e4. Not immediately. Immediately, it's not a good move. But down the line, e4 could be a problem. Here, the red circle. That's the ideas. And so we've got to be careful now. Something that I always watch out for in my game, something that I actually struggle with, is when opponents put f5 and e4 on the board and it feels like I'm getting crushed. Now, when I go back to this Chessable course, there are some 800 lines in this Chessable course. I don't know all this stuff. Okay, it will take me a lifetime to understand this, and I think I still won't understand it. But what I'm trying to say is let's focus on the key ideas that should be sufficient at the low levels. And so when it comes to your opening choice, it probably doesn't matter. Now, all of this should be interesting coming from me because I'm just a regular adult chess improver, father of 2 little girls, picked up the game when I was 36. Now I'm 40, I got a bit better at the game, played 1b3, but ultimately I do a lot of my tactics puzzles. And so this leads me to the next part of this, which is drillers make killers. This is a statement or phrase that I saw somebody post on my channel, a boxing fan, and I'm going to recycle it. I absolutely love it. And obviously this cat is looking deadly here. And it reminded me a lot of the way I had been thinking about my chess. I have a very kind of simple way of going through chess and getting better at this game, which is to do tons and tons and tons of tactics puzzles. And so, for example, on chess.com, Puzzle Rush Survival is something that I do on a regular basis. This is where you start off with very basic puzzles, but then they get harder and harder and harder, and it's 3 strikes and you're out. And so one of the things that I try to do most days is to hit a score between 40 and 50. Okay, got an appalling 18 score here, but I try to get between 40 and 50, try to spend no more than about 30 seconds or 1 minute per puzzle. And this is important because ultimately online chess is about managing time. We are not playing classical over the board chess. Even if you play 10-minute rapid online, a lot of your games are going to just degrade into blitz games. And so your ability to recognize patterns, to recognize and see tactics quickly is important. It's not enough to say that you know mate in 2, mate in 3. You've got to see it quickly. And so to be clear, the London works. Okay, so I'm not saying that don't play the London, let's drop it, play some other opening. But I think it's a little bit hyped up, and there is a big kind of irrational fear of major theoretical openings. The fear of the major theoretical opening is, of course, again, driven out of kind of the major chess community, online chess content creators. So again, here, picking on Gotham Chess here, a little bit unfair. But there is this very popular video here, stop playing these 4 chess openings, 1.4 million views, and you can fast forward this video to 1 minute 30 odd in the video, and he'll say the following.
But if you get to this position, and by the way, you don't even have to get to this position, you can play a different second move. Why on earth would you play the Ruy Lopez? Who do you think you are? You think you're some 2,700 grand? Do you even know what the Ruy Lopez is?
So there you go. Okay, so you get this type of advice. Okay, so don't play the Ruy Lopez. And just to be clear, this person is an international master. They are an elite player. Okay, obviously there are lots of memes about him not being a grandmaster, but ultimately relative to the rest of us, he is an elite player. I'm nobody. However, if we go into the stats again, the stats just don't really back him up. Like if we go into and study this idea of not playing the Ruy Lopez, not playing these major theoretical openings, you can see in the Lichess database here that when you have e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6 on the board, bishop c4, the Italian, is a very popular choice. However, people who play bishop b5 are doing a little bit better here, win percentage of 51%. Okay, more interesting here is d4, the Scotch, has an even higher win percentage of 53%, and perhaps that's because d4 actually opens up the position, makes the game a lot about the tactical finds. Now, if you don't know what card this is or what movie it signifies, you're probably quite young. One of my favorite movies of all time is Back to the Future. In this movie, a DeLorean is turned into a time machine. What an idea. If I was to go back in time to late 2020 and redo my chess journey from when I was 800, making my way up to almost 1900 on chess.com, around 1400, I switched to playing 1b3 from e4. I would change the story by playing offbeat lines within the Queen's Gambit or the Ruy Lopez, the so-called major theoretical openings. And the reason for doing that is that it's going to be solid and unknown to your opponent at the same time. So you're getting the best of both worlds. And also, it's a good long-term decision. One of the problems with playing b3 is that the stronger I get, obviously, the stronger opponents I meet, and it becomes very difficult for me to find the accurate moves that keep me in the game. And I'm noticing this problem a lot in over-the-board classical chess. Obviously, when you play the Queen's Gambit or the Ruy Lopez, I think what you find is that the reason they're so solid is that you get a lot of resources to deal with the situation. And so this idea that you need to play a solid or system-based opening is, I think, a myth. Really what people are trying to say when they say things like this is play the London, play the Colle, and that's all you need. But the stats don't really back it up. I am flesh and blood on the internet of somebody that's made my way through chess playing something as offbeat as 1b3. We've got to focus on the ideas. We've got to focus on doing our tactics puzzles. That's it, bye.